Hey guys, how's it going? Today I want to talk about a book by Stephen King called Revival. I've been reading a lot of Stephen King lately. I've enjoyed most of them. Revival is the only one that I don't particularly like so far. Revival was published in 2014. It's one of Stephen King's more recent books, and it's really boring. Parts of it are good. The concept of it is good. I like that it's existential. I like that it's dark. I like that it has that level of cosmic horror. It's very Lovecraftian. There's even a Lovecraft quote at the beginning of the book. I can't remember where I heard this or if I just thought of it, but it seems like Lovecraft is almost the opposite of Star Trek, or like Gene Roddenberry's version of Star Trek, where with Star Trek, knowledge and growth and understanding of the universe around you led you to be able to develop and grow until you could basically create a utopia, which is kind of what Star Trek is. It's a world that has progressed past racism, past death anxiety to a degree. Humanity has reached its apex almost. The concept behind Lovecraft is that the more you understand, that is, truly understand the universe around you, the less sane you become. That is the basis of Call of Cthulhu, essentially. And it's also the concept behind Revival. However, it is a slog to get to those parts that deal with those things in a truly engrossing way. And the rest of it is not quite compelling enough to have kept me interested until that point. The thing about Stephen King is he doesn't write books the way that I normally like them to be written. And I'm aware that this is not, that every writer has their own process. There are so many different types of stories, so many different types of taste. I'm just talking about what I usually look for. I like there to be character arcs. And what I mean by a character arc is not just, oh, the character feels a certain way at the beginning of the story, feels a certain way at the end. That's not what I mean. I mean that there is a dynamic and discernible progression that you can see that is concrete, where a character who believed one thing that held them back or hurt them in some way, at the end they discover that they were wrong, or their perception changes in some way, and so they're able to progress and deal with things in a way that they could not before. I find that really compelling. And believe it or not, that's not always the way that stories are written. At least it seems to me. Stephen King doesn't write this way. Not necessarily. He writes things in a way that's situational. He comes up with an interesting situation to be in and then writes about those characters trying to get out of that situation. Yes, there's character development, but the mom in The Shining, the fact that she can stand up to her husband at the end of the book, that's different than having an actual dynamic reason and a shift in mindset that led to that point that is concrete and discernible. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense. But usually that doesn't matter because the ideas and the concept and the premise is compelling enough that it carries you through that and you're just immersed and engrossed in what's happening. And that's fine, and that's the type of story that it is. Not only does Revival not have a compelling main character that develops in an interesting way, the conflict is mostly non-existent, and the tension is mostly non-existent, and most of the scenes are fluffy, they feel like padding, and they feel like filler. It's a lot of stuff that you have to get through just to get to the last 2 or 3 chapters, which are pretty cool, but in my opinion, the wait and the slog to get there does not make it worth it. In a way, I'm actually surprised that so many people got through this book and really enjoyed it, but I can kind of understand it because Stephen King's style, I mean, if you're familiar with it, it's just comfortable. You know, it's comforting and familiar. If you're a longtime fan of Stephen King, I can see picking up this book and reading it all the way through. And once you get to the end and you get to that incredible last couple of chapters, I mean, those chapters do stick with you to some degree. It's the kind of thing that can keep you up, at night, and it sticks with you. And that's great. And if that's the only thing that particularly you remembered when you read the book, which I feel like for a lot of people that would be true, then yeah, you would look back at Revival as being an intense, disturbing book by Stephen King, at least according to the reviews that I've read on Goodreads. One comment on Goodreads was kind of interesting. He said that he couldn't get through it and he wanted to know what happened at the end. And someone else responded and said, I think that you should suffer through it like the rest of us. And for a moment when I read that, I was feeling a bit unclear as to, is he talking about how dark the ending is, or is he talking about how long this book feels and how little happens? Because again, the core of what makes Stephen King interesting is the conflict and the tension, the compelling nature of the situation that the characters are in. Most of the first chapter, or at least a big chunk of it, is the main character and his family sitting down and eating pancakes, and there's very little conflict in that scene. He gets some army men for, I think, his birthday. He goes outside, he plays with the army men in the dirt, and before that, there's a bit of foreshadowing. That's how the book starts off. It basically tells you, hey, this is going to be worth it. This is going somewhere. Perhaps that's another reason why people get through it. It was why I got through it, because I'd heard that it was this interesting, dark, kind of Lovecrafty story, and I had an idea of how it ended, and I was excited to get there and experience that. The book continually foreshadows the revelations that are going to take place, but again, those revelations don't take place till the end of the book. And the rest of the time, it's either foreshadowing is happening, or just the fluff of just describing things happening in the main character's life without any discernible continuity beyond the fact that this is happening now in his life, and this is happening now in his life. This is the chapter where he gets a girlfriend. This is the chapter where his mom dies. I remember writing a paper and showing it to my mom. One of the things that I put in there is like, this was the year that this person I was writing a paper about, like, his mom died. And my mom looked at that and was like, everybody's mom dies. How is this relevant to the actual topic of what you're talking about? That's like this whole book. There's a whole lot of filler and padding, and only tiny bits and pieces, if any of it, really is important for the big reveal at the end. It's difficult to just straight up say that it's poorly written. I definitely have a hard time saying that. You can tell that it's written by a seasoned author who for the most part knows what he's doing, but the story just lacks all these essential pieces that are required in order to string it out over such the length that it is. It takes place over the course of this character's entire life, and there's only a couple key things that are even important to the ending. If I had to break down the parts of the book that I did enjoy, is I enjoyed the foreshadowing because it was always really ominous, and it made me want to know what the revelation was. I enjoyed the last couple chapters. I enjoyed the scene where there's this character, and bear in mind, this actually does tie into the overall theme of the story cohesively. It makes sense that this part would be so well done. There's a character who's a preacher, and because of something traumatic that happens to him, he comes to believe that the universe is meaningless and that there's no point to life. And he gives a sermon about this where he just breaks it all down, and he kind of breaks down the basic tenets of like Christianity and religion and stuff. And you could just kind of see him going down into this place, and all of these people that are just so shocked being exposed to this idea that they don't even want to consider, you know, and it's just really fascinating, and it's tense, and it's good dialogue and a good scene writing. It's good scene writing in a way that you want from Stephen King, but most of the book isn't that. I've been wanting, just because I've been reading so much Stephen King lately, to eventually make a video ranking every single Stephen King novel. As of right now, Pet Sematary is still at the top. That's just how I feel about it. Revival is definitely on the bottom, unless there is another Stephen King novel that is just a lower level of mediocre and just more boring to read to me. That's where Revival is going to be. It's right at the bottom of the list. Anyway, let me know if you disagree in the comments. I think I kind of laid out my thoughts on that, and hopefully presented that in a way that makes sense. I'm excited to talk about books some more, and I'll talk to you guys later.